Coming up on 5 Minute News. Republicans pull ahead in tight Virginia governor's race. World leaders vow to protect forests plugging methane leaks. And China defends carbon emissions, criticizes US under Trump. It's Wednesday, November 3. I'm Anthony Davis. The US's most closely watched off-year election wrapped up on Tuesday in Virginia, where voters chose between Democrat Terry McAuliffe and Republican Glenn Youngkin in a campaign that became partly a referendum on President Joe Biden's first year in office. Barely 12 months after Biden captured the state by 10 points, the governor's race was supposed to be a comfortable win for Democrats. Instead, McAuliffe, a prominent figure in Democratic politics and a former Virginia governor, was 10 points behind former business executive Youngkin as he tried to reclaim the post. The bruising campaign centered on issues including Youngkin's ties to former President Trump, the future of abortion rights, and culture war battles over schools. But voters saw the economy as the top issue, followed by the coronavirus pandemic. Those issues outranked healthcare, climate change, racism, and abortion in a survey. The final results, though, may ultimately be interpreted as an early judgment of Biden. The closeness of the race indicated just how much his political fortunes have changed in a short period. The White House has been shaken in recent months by coverage of the withdrawal of U.S. forces from Afghanistan, a sometimes sluggish economic recovery amid the pandemic, and a legislative agenda at risk of stalling on Capitol Hill. Tuesday's voting also featured a governor's race in New Jersey, mayoral offices around the country, and a major policing question in Minneapolis. Still, both Virginia candidates said the implications of the first major election since Biden moved into the White House would be felt well beyond their state. World leaders promise to protect Earth's forests, cut methane emissions, and help South Africa wean itself off of coal at the UN Climate Summit on Tuesday, part of a flurry of deals intended to avert. Britain hailed the commitment by more than 100 countries to end deforestation in the coming decade as the first big achievement of the conference in the Scottish city of Glasgow. But some experts, including activist Greta Thunberg, noted such promises have been made and broken before. More than 120 world leaders were heading home after 2 days in which they received stark warnings about the state of the earth from Boris Johnson, naturalist David Attenborough, Queen Elizabeth II, and most importantly, the people of countries and regions already facing climate upheaval. Johnson said at a news conference that it was important to guard against false hope, but he added he was cautiously optimistic about the outcome of the talks. The conference aims to keep the world on track to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels, a goal set at the Paris Climate Conference 6 years ago, and one that many countries seem unlikely to achieve. Boris Johnson had a message for negotiators from around the globe who will strain over the next 10 years to turn politicians' climate promises into reality. The eyes of the populations of the world are on you. China is at a special development stage that warrants its current status as the world's biggest emitter of climate-damaging fossil fuel pollution, the nation's senior climate negotiator said on Tuesday. A special climate envoy for China spoke to reporters at the UN Climate Summit. As the largest climate polluter and the world's second biggest economy, China has been much talked about but little seen at the summit. Chinese President Xi Jinping, who is not known to have left the country during the pandemic, has not joined the more than 100 other world leaders at the event, addressing observers and delegates in a written message on Monday instead. China, which is heavily dependent on coal-fired power, pledged last year to start reining in its fossil fuel emissions later this decade and to become carbon neutral by 2060. Climate negotiators welcomed Xi's announcements, but its 2060 date is a decade later than many other countries' targets, and Xi has resisted international calls to move faster. Despite China's status as an economic powerhouse, its leaders argue that factors that include China's modest per capita income still make it a developing country. As such, it bears less burden to cut emissions than economies like the United States or Europe that have already powered to wealth by burning coal and petroleum, China argues. The average American still produces more than twice the climate-damaging amount of carbon dioxide from fossil fuels than the average Chinese citizen. China and US officials have long played a mutual blame game as global warming intensifies, with China faulting the US as the world's largest climate polluter historically, and Donald Trump's administration in particular pointing to China's pollution in justifying rollbacks of US climate efforts. You can subscribe to 5 Minute News on YouTube with your preferred podcast app. Ask your smart speaker or enable 5 Minute News as your Amazon Alexa flash briefing skill. Subscribe, rate and review online at 5minute.news. 5 Minute News is an Evergreen podcast covering politics, inequality, health and climate, delivering independent, unbiased and essential world news daily.